Welcome back to Nimble Youth, the podcast where we explore the emotional lives of children and teens and help parents and caregivers better understand how to support them. I'm your host, Matt Butterman. Today's episode is about something both deeply personal and deeply universal. This idea that what we carry as parents doesn't start with us. Our reactions, our triggers, our fears, even the ways we connect or struggle to connect with our children, they often have roots that go back generations. But here's the hopeful part. Those patterns can change. And today's guest is someone who helps families do exactly that. My guest is Jessica Sweeney, a therapist based here in our home base of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. She is the founder of Sunglow Counseling. Jessica specializes in trauma-informed care, including EM, which we'll get into shortly, and works with individuals and families to heal from past experiences and build stronger, more connected relationships. Jessica, welcome to Nimble Youth.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So let's start with a big concept that I think is often misunderstood, and that's trauma. Because when people hear that word, they often think of dramatic, extreme experiences. But in your work, trauma can be much more subtle and can often be, so common that we often miss it. So how do you define trauma, especially in the context of parenting and family life?
Yeah. So I like to replace the word trauma with distress, right? And so if we were to go into different definitions of trauma, there's big T trauma, little t trauma. Big T is the big event. Little t are the more subtle nuances that happen over time that often get overlooked. But I like to codify it as distress because our nervous system doesn't quite know the difference between different levels of distress, right? It just experiences distress. So it's more encompassing to the more nuanced that happens, right? And that things are bothersome, things happen, but when you're in a level of distress, it totally dysregulates your nervous system. There's no filter, yeah.
Yeah, so is it fair to say that trauma's sort of less about what happened, but how we react to it, how we process it, right?
Yeah, how your body codifies it and what blueprint it brings to the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have a blueprint that's more saturated in distress and dysregulation, how you experience the trauma is going to be very different than someone that comes in with a much more resourced, neutral, or positive nervous system.
Right. So you do a lot of work, and I suppose anyone who's in the behavioral healthcare space does a lot of work around intergenerational trauma. And that's the idea that emotional patterns and wounds can be passed down through families and generations. How does that happen? What are the mechanics kind of behind that?
So we all are born as parents, whatever that initial experience is. It's oftentimes described as a light switch, right? You are the person you are before, and then you're the person that you are after. And we have this blueprint that gets activated that some of us are aware of. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's unconscious, right? And when it comes to intergenerational work, right, I'm sure that we all remember the times where when I'm a parent, I'm not going to do this, or my parent did this and I really want to make sure and do the same. And then you're in the throes of it. And there's just a lot of instinctual responsivity, right? And for some, that's reactive, but for others, it's responsive or a combination of both. And when pain is not worked through, it gets passed down. So much like we're aware of what could be helpful, the instinctual things that your nervous system just starts to do can be expressed in intergenerational trauma and then compounded when you are a parent interacting with a kiddo that you had no idea would be activating you, and is.
Right. And so are there some ways that parents might recognize some of these patterns in themselves? Are there sort of outward signs that are easily recognizable, or is that something that usually comes out through your work in therapy?
I think it's a little bit of all the above, right? The ouchie moments are the ones, because we as our ability to learn is mostly negatively biased, right? Like we as people find ourselves to be much more aware of what we did wrong or where we struggled or those cringe moments. I like to describe like the
right
with parents where you look back and you're like, man, I really missed the mark on that. Let's see if I get it next time, right? And so oftentimes those are the moments we pay attention to and that we hone in on where like, ooh, I really overreacted, or maybe I was more punitive, or my kid was so dysregulated and or overwhelmed, and I got overwhelmed and there was no connection until later and I just felt bad about it, right? So more often than not, those are the patterns that we start to find. And then once you're in therapy, which is shining the light on everything, there's a much greater system at play that we need to learn about.
Right. And the hopeful thing is that these patterns can change, and that's where you come in.
Yes. And that's where EMDR has such power.
Yeah. And that leads right next to my next question. And so let's talk about EMDR. It's one of the primary tools that you use in your practice. And EMDR, again, stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And so for many of our listeners, it might be a new concept, but give us the lowdown on EMDR and how it works.
Yeah. So central, I'll try to keep the psychobabble to a minimum, right? So that we can keep it to very simple deliverables. EMDR is complementing what your body already knows how to do, right? And our bodies are wired to heal. And that is really the hope in so much of the recognition of what we're talking about today and these stickier subjects that are just rooted in a lot of shame and embarrassment, right? Is that we're all humans doing our best and that our body knows what to do. We just need to put ourselves in an environment to help facilitate it happening, right? And so that's called the adaptive information processing system, right? Which is central to EMDR. When we look at this from a trauma-informed lens, right, the intensity of what you're experiencing is your body's way of saying, there's stuff happening and I'm jammed. I need help getting through this. And so EMDR comes on as a support to help reorganize what's happening and again, let your body do what it needs to do, right? So metaphorically, this is like taking a paper shredder that's jammed because you're trying to put 50 pages in it, taking the pages out, evaluating them, and doing one page at a time.
So it's kind of like, instead of keeping the drama around a traumatic situation or something that's happened to you, kind of it removes that and allows your brain to, in essence, that's it objectively, right? It takes away all the fear and all the other emotions that can surround an experience in the past. Is that a fair way to put it?
Sure. You get to witness what's happening, right? Yeah. Versus controlling what's happening. And the goal is that you're removing that emotional charge. I like to describe it as taking the fuel out of the fuel tanks. You take the fuel out of the fuel tanks so that they're just tanks. They're just things that happened. They're moments in time. They don't have the same intensity and distress associated with them. Yeah.
So I suppose we'll get into how it's helpful with this kind of intergenerational trauma, but I suppose is it helpful for things like people who have had just very PTSD, things like that, perhaps phobias as well? And have you found a lot of efficacy with those conditions?
Yes. So this theoretical orientation came out during a time where talk therapy was struggling. And so we were getting creative about ways that we can help people get better, because talking them out was just re-exposing them to their distress and they were getting worse. So research has now shown many decades later that it's about, again, that distress, that experience of distress. And that happens when you're anxious. That happens when you're panicked. That happens when you're locked in an obsessive thought that's intrusive and bothersome, or when you're feeling deeply depressed and you can't just get up and do the thing. EMDR has shown robust benefits across all of these symptoms and areas.
Right.
Yeah.
So on this podcast, we're concerned, I guess, primarily about therapy for young people, children and young adults. But in your practice and in many others, parents bring their own histories into the relationship. And so how can EMDR in particular help parents become themselves more present and regulated with their?
Yeah. I see how it helps you bring your back to yourself, right? So you're able to get underneath these blocks that are happening behaviorally or emotionally or cognitively, right? So these are the I'm a bad mom, or no matter what, I feel like I get overwhelmed, I'm yelling, or I don't know why I do that, right? Like it helps get underneath these patterns so that you can clear out, like I said, the fuel tanks and really find yourself again, right? It's really hard to make a conscious decision when your full brain is not on board. And when you're in your trigger, you lose so much access to making rational, balanced decisions that are calm, right? It's very hard to stay regulated during those moments. So I see where it really shines in that way. And extinguishing your fire versus your fire catching on with your kiddo's fire, right?
Right.
And then it becoming this huge bonfire.
Exactly. Yeah. It removes the fuel, as you say. So another area that you focus on is parenting from what you call an attachment lens. And that phrase I know gets used a lot, but I think many people aren't entirely sure what attachment refers to. And so what does it mean to parent from an attachment-based perspective?
Yeah, we're focusing on teaching kids what to learn or expect from relationships. So they are learning how to have a relationship with themselves and then how to have a relationship with the world as it relates to how they're connecting with you, right? So the primary tenets of a secure attachment or a safe attachment are feeling safe, feeling seen, feeling supported. As a parent, that looks like, rather than focusing on being right, focusing on being present and leaning in, listening.
Yeah.
What's happening.
Connected and not being this sort of authority figure from above, right? Making connections with your child.
Yeah. And being here now.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So one of the most reassuring ideas in attachment theory is that connection it's not about getting it right all the time, but it's about repairing the places where, the relationship is injured, where it's falling apart. So let's talk about the importance of repair in parent-child relationships.
There is no such thing as a perfect parent, right? Also established in social media and the access to so many people parenting and learning what is right and what is wrong also sets parents up for failure, right? And that parenting is so messy. There's so much learning all the time. In my home, one of the phrases that my partner and I use and we use with our kiddos is that we're all learning all the time, and we're all doing our best, no matter what the circumstances at play. And one of the mentors that I look to with a lot of the parenting work that I do to help give language and give understanding is Dr. Becky Kennedy with Good Inside. I'm sure she's very buzzy, so I'm sure the name is common enough. If it's not, I recommend looking into her. Mm-hmm. And she talks candidly about the importance of recovery. And one of the pieces that I appreciate about how she speaks on and educates on recovery is that it's never too late and that your attention to connection is central, right? So as uncomfortable and as hard as repair may be, it's less about doing it right and more about showing both to yourself and to the kiddo or whatever the rupture, whomever you're having the rupture with, is that you matter. I love you no matter what you do or what is happening. Let's work on this together. Right. And taking ownership for being a human being who's learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's an important message because every parent makes mistakes. Certainly I've made my fair share of mistakes, but what happens, what matters is what comes after that, right? What happens next?
Right. You're supposed to make mistakes, right? Like learning, being a parent is not Instagrammable.
Yep.
It's messy and it's intense and it's boring and it's very loving and not liking, right? Like it's all of the things. And by showing kiddos that you can have a hard time and that you can be uncomfortable and that you can be sturdy and steady. The learning that comes from just experiencing that and then learning that that is what it's like to have a healthy relationship, that cascades into so many other positive connections and understandings.
Yeah, for sure. So many parents have moments where their reaction feels bigger than the situation warrants. And so a child's behavior can trigger something that's deep inside us, generationally instilled in us. So what's happening when, as parents, we might overreact to something?
That is your nervous system telling you that this is not just the situation, that there is historical stuff happening that is beyond what's in front of you. So, and that can be exasperated by burnout and overwhelm. And being a parent is just overwhelming. The nature of the role is overwhelming, right?
Yes.
So recognition that it's older than your kiddo and that for right now, you don't need to light the match and then light the fire to the gas tank, right? You can just refocus on the present, right? Can be very valuable. However, with trauma reactivity, sometimes you don't get that choice. Sometimes the gas, it's ignited before you even know it. And again, that's where EMDR can really shine, because as much as you may understand and know that there's an irrationality here, or that this is an overreaction, or you want to believe you're doing your best, but no matter how much you believe it, it doesn't feel true. This is where your nervous system is locked. It's where the paper shredder is jammed, right? And so that naming and understanding can be helpful, but there's more too. Yeah,
for sure. So let's talk a little bit about regulation and co-regulation. So we talk a lot on this podcast about emotional regulation, but for children that often starts with what's often called co-regulation. So explain for us what regulation and co-regulation are and how they look like in everyday parenting.
Sure. I like to use metaphors a lot to explain things that are abstract. So I explain co-regulation as you being the thermostat. And when you are setting your temperature at a temperature that you can maintain, regardless of the temperatures that are happening around you. You are making sure that your batteries are working and that you got your HVAC ran and done and all the things. So things are running smoothly so that you can be aware of the temperature that you're running and be aware that temperatures are going to change around you. And that when temperatures are changing around you, you're able to hold steady and securely so that they can join your temperature versus you matching them, right? It's the interaction of staying out of the way so that you can focus on maintaining connection. You're not fixing the moment, you're holding the moment.
Right.
And prioritizing connection with a sense of calm, direct presence that's sturdy.
Gotcha. So for parents listening, they might recognize patterns that they don't want to pass on. They don't want to keep regenerating this generational pattern of behavior. If it is things like anxiety or emotional distance or reactivity, what's the first step for them to begin to break that cycle?
Yeah, there's a lot of hope in this question and awareness that you're listening to this podcast. You're probably listening to other podcasts. You're probably reading books. You're probably aware that you want to work on yourself. You want to work on these relationships and that you're learning. So leaning in with a sense of grace and positivity that regardless of the outcome, there's already a lot working. And in lieu of knowing what to do, you're trying. And that it's okay that awareness is on board. Even if you don't know what to do, you're already ahead of the game.
Right. Exactly.
And giving yourself that sense of grace and support. Otherwise, take a breath. You're not supposed to know what to do. It's okay if you don't know what to do. Take a breath and ask yourself, what do I need to connect right now? And sometimes it's starting with connection to yourself. Sometimes it's really dysregulated. They're at 85 degrees. My batteries aren't working. I'm at 90. I need to just go for a walk quietly with my kiddo. Other times it's I need to hold their hand, right? A lot of these solutions are learned by practice and by being uncomfortable. But for the time being, recognizing you're already ahead of the game and giving yourself kudos, taking a breath before anything else and focusing on the connection, and that your kids don't care about things being right. They just want you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes in any kind of interpersonal relationship, you can feel discouraged. You've made too many mistakes along the way, and the relationship is, forever sullied, almost beyond repair. If you're in a marriage or something, there are things to do, but sometimes that results in a breaking of the relationship. Obviously, you don't want to do that with your children. It happens, unfortunately, but you want to keep that relationship very strong with your children. But parents may feel, I've made too many mistakes along the way. There are ways to come back from that. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
And every relationship is different.
Right.
To reiterate what I just shared, they just want you.
Yeah.
They don't want, those seeking perfection. That can cause other problems too.
Right.
Because we don't live life in a cube of perfection, right? Fundamentally reminding yourself that you finding yourself helps you be yourself with them, and that being a parent is a very selfless endeavor that is overwhelming, with which there is no handbook. There are lots of parenting books out there, but there is no fundamental handbook.
Right.
And that learning about yourself and being vulnerable and challenging and addressing and overcoming the things that are interfering with your ability to feel enough as you are will help you, and that it's never too late. It's never too late. Time passes, circumstances happen, and the want and the love for connection, that pilot light never goes out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly a theme that we've echoed a lot on this podcast. Before you can help your child, sometimes you have to explore what's going on within yourself, right? As a parent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up our conversation, I keep coming back to this idea, and it's that we don't get to choose what we inherit, but we do get to choose what we then pass on. So healing, whether it's through things like EMDR, through reflection and counseling, through small moments of connection, it's not about becoming a perfect parent, but it's becoming a more aware one, a more aware of what's happening basically around you. So before we close, is there one sort of final takeaway you'd like to leave with our listeners?
That connection is key.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what to do, take a breath. It's okay. You're not supposed to know what to do. That your kids just want you.
Right. Yeah. Presence is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. My guest today has been Jessica Sweeney. She's a therapist and founder of Sunglow Counseling right here in Winston-Salem. She specializes in trauma-informed care, EMDR, and attachment-based therapy. You can learn more about Jessica and her work at www.sunglowcounseling. We'll have the link to that in our show notes, and we'll also link to the author in the book you referenced earlier as well. So if today's conversation resonated with you, please do share this episode with a friend, and don't forget to rate and review Nimble Youth on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, because your support helps us continue these important conversations around youth mental health and family connection. Until next time, remember, healing doesn't just change you, it changes the generations that come after you. I'm Matt Butterman. This is Nimble Youth. We'll see you next time.